This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. Good morning, I'm John Trout. It's Tuesday, June 17th, 2025. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
President Trump returns home early from the G7 with the Israel-Iran conflict growing in intensity. I'm John Stolnis in Washington.
Authorities share the gruesome timeline of the Minnesota shooting suspect.
His crimes are the stuff of nightmares.
I'm Rich Johnson.
President Trump takes his immigration crackdown a step further.
Most of those people are in the cities.
I'm Clayton Neville.
Discrimination against white farmers, a new lawsuit against the Trump administration, and a death at a No Kings rally in Salt Lake City is under investigation. We'll have the latest.
On Wall Street, investors are watching the Middle East conflict and oil prices. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
Joey Jaws Chestnut says he will return to compete in this year's Nathan's Famous 4th of July hot dog eating contest. I'm Ed Donahue.
All ahead on America in the Morning. Evacuate Tehran. A dire warning from President Trump, who's gathered his national security team in the Situation Room after cutting short his attendance at the G7 in Canada. With our top story reporting from Washington, here's John Stolnis.
It was a day of deal-making for the president at the G7. The biggest deal, a trade agreement with the United Kingdom that Trump and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer called fair for both sides.
Going to produce a lot of jobs, a lot of income. But you see the level of enthusiasm is very good. But the relationship that we have is fantastic.
This now implements on car tariffs and aerospace, our really important agreement. And so this is a very good day for both of our countries, a real sign of strength.
One item it was believed would be a part of the agreement, tariffs on steel, were not in this agreement, although both sides continue negotiations. The president began the day with the host of this week's meeting, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. The two sides agreed to a 30-day window for a trade deal, but the focus of reporter questioning the conflict between Israel and Iran.
They'd like to talk, but they should have done that before. I had 60 days, and they had 60 days, and on the 61st day, I said, we don't have a deal. They have to make a deal, and it's painful for both parties, but I'd say Iran is not winning this war.
The president was supposed to stay at the G7 through today, but returned back to Washington last night, ordering a late-night meeting with his National Security Council in the Oval Office, presumably over Israel and Iran. On social media, he called for everyone to evacuate the city of Tehran, the capital of Iran, home to 9.5 million people. He was supposed to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky today. Zelensky spoke yesterday about the war with Russia. We are doing everything possible to end the war. The steps are completely understandable. First, complete and unconditional ceasefire, and then real and honest diplomacy. Britain and other G7 nations are slapping new sanctions on Russia over the Ukraine war, but President Trump said he's holding off until Europe acts on those threats. John Stolnis, Washington.
The U.S. military has moved additional ships and aerial refueling tanker aircraft into the Middle East and hurried a carrier to the region. Politico is reporting the aircraft carrier USS Nimitz was rerouted from the South China Sea to the Middle East, which will give the U.S. 2 aircraft carriers in the region by the end of the week. The man accused of gunning down 2 Minnesota state lawmakers and their spouses made a short court appearance Monday and is now in federal custody. Correspondent Rich Johnson has more on the crimes, the manhunt, and the arrest.
It is no exaggeration to say that his crimes are the stuff of nightmares.
The acting U.S. Attorney for Minnesota, Joseph Thompson, detailed the murder and other charges against 57-year-old Vance Belter. He says it began early Saturday with the shootings of State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, who both survived. Working from a carefully prepared list of about 45 public officials, Belter then went to the homes of 2 other state lawmakers who were not home. And it ended at the suburban Minneapolis home of State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband, as, according to Thompson, Belter was confronted by police officers.
When Belter saw the officers get out of the car, he drew his weapon and began firing. He rushed into the house through the front door, firing into it. He repeatedly fired into the house, and when he entered, he murdered Representative Hortman and her husband.
Belter escaped out the back, triggering a nearly 48-hour manhunt that ended in a field near his home in the town of Green Isle.
He was walking in this grass, and once I realized that there was no other people here and there was no other vehicles, I started freaking out.
Wendy Thompson says she quickly called police, who eventually captured Belter.
I just couldn't believe that he would do something like that.
The owner of that field, Kevin Efforts, says he knew Belter.
He worked a lot. He told me that he worked for a couple companies, had a lot of different jobs.
Efforts and Thompson's comments courtesy of KARE-TV. While the manhunt is over, the shock is far from finished. Senator Amy Klobuchar told Fox 9 in Minneapolis she's grieving for her longtime friend, Melissa Hortman.
She's someone that people respected, whether they were Democrats or Republicans. She got stuff done, taught Sunday school, Girl Scout leader, balanced raising kids while being in the legislature. We came into politics around the same time, and she was really a leader like no other.
And back in Green Isle, Kevin Efforts says it's a good bet his community won't be the same.
Most people out here don't even have to ever worry about locking their doors because everybody watches out for everybody. And now that'll change, I'm sure.
I'm Rich Johnson.
The top stories of the day are sponsored by Sleep Number. Smarter sleep is life-changing. Save over $600 on a Sleep Number King P5 smart bed, the lowest price of the season, only at a Sleep Number store. The Iceman cometh when America in the Morning returns after these messages. Welcome back. Here with America in the Morning. For June, we've passed the mid-month mark. Here's today's forecast with AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
Thunderstorms will once again be heading through the Plain States today into tonight. These storms will shift in coverage a little farther south through Nebraska into Kansas and Missouri today. Even to start the day, there'll be a few gusty thunderstorms in the region, and then another round will develop this afternoon into tonight. The strongest of these storms will be through southern Nebraska into Kansas, but also extend into southern Iowa, northern Illinois, Wisconsin, and western Michigan. AccuWeather severe weather experts are saying these storms will have the potential for very heavy rain-damaging wind gusts, hail, and even a few tornadoes. A few more scattered afternoon thunderstorms could also develop to the west of the area from eastern Montana through Wyoming and northeast Colorado. Farther east, there'll be widespread showers and thunderstorms from Louisiana eastward along the Gulf Coast through Florida, and then northward to Ohio and western Pennsylvania, with frequent showers into the rest of Pennsylvania, New York, and New England. A few of the storms in West Virginia and Virginia could bring some drenching rainfall to the area with localized flash flooding as well as some stronger wind gusts. Through the southern plains, they'll be looking at a largely dry day with plenty of sunshine and a hot afternoon. This will include southern Kansas before thunderstorms arrive, and then southward through Oklahoma and Texas, where highs will easily reach into the 90s, with West Texas having widespread 100s and even a few 110s. That's the weather across America. It is going to be a very hot day in Roswell, New Mexico, with plenty of sunshine and a record-breaking high of 109. There will be a few more clouds and a heavier thunderstorm in La Crosse, Wisconsin, with a high of 81. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
Listen to the podcast version of America in the Morning. Search for us in your favorite listening app. President Trump is directing ICE to further ramp up deportation efforts of illegal immigrants. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports.
President Trump took to social media this week just days after thousands of demonstrations nationwide against his immigration policies to announce that he's directing ICE to ramp up efforts to detain and deport migrants from large Democratic-run cities.
Most of those people are in the cities. All blue cities.
The president said in his Truth Social post that the U.S. has to expand deportations in places like Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York. He spoke about the deportations while at the G7 summit in Canada.
All Democrat-run cities, and they think they're going to use them to vote. It's not going to happen.
The president now urging immigration officials to focus on what he calls crime-ridden and deadly inner cities. He ended the post with, "Now go. Get the job done," in all caps. A bit of a different tone from last week when the president promised policy change that would protect migrant farmers. I'm Clayton Neville.
An unusual legal filing against the White House. Washington correspondent Sagar Meghani reports on a lawsuit accusing the Trump administration of discriminating against white farmers.
As the Trump administration works to root out DEI practices, it's facing a lawsuit claiming discrimination against white farmers. A conservative group in Wisconsin is suing the Agriculture Department on behalf of a white dairy farmer, alleging the administration's illegally denying financial aid to white farmers by continuing programs favoring minorities. The suit claims the government's still implementing DEI programs instituted under the Biden administration, which put white men at a disadvantage. Farmer Adam Faust says the Agriculture Department should honor the president's promise to end racial discrimination in the federal government. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
When we return on America in the Morning, a closer look at the volatile oil markets, and Trump's kids start a new cell phone company. After these messages. This is America in the Morning. The Business Report is brought to you by Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments is a fiduciary, always putting clients' interests first. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Most investors were in the green yesterday on Wall Street. Here's CNBC's Jessica Ettinger.
Wall Street opens this morning after a winning day for stocks. The market saw oil pull back amid hope that the Israel-Iran conflict will be contained. The Dow was up 300 points.
16 52-week highs for S&P 500 companies. You've got IBM, Microsoft, Palantir, Darden. And yes, we continue to show the resiliency in this market.
That's Virtus Investments' Joe Terranova on CNBC. But there were names that pulled back yesterday, like defense companies. Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and L3 Harris all down at least 3%. Oil sold off from its fleeting pop last Friday amid the Middle East conflict. Still higher, though, than it's been for the past few months, around $72 a barrel for U.S. crude. That's WTI, West Texas Intermediate. But it could go back up higher.
If the Iranian regime comes to believe that what the Israelis want is regime change, I would not rule out that we could see energy infrastructure attacks in a prolonged war situation. Again, if this war extends, if Israel is basically intent on regime change becoming the goal or bringing the United States into this conflict, I don't think we can rule out that we could see energy once again in the crosshairs of a conflict in the Middle East.
RBC's Halima Croft on CNBC. President Trump's sons have announced a new business, Trump Mobile, $47 a month, a tip of the hat to the 47th president, and a phone costs around $500, which The Verge says is a stripped-down Android made in China.
The T1 Model 8002, which is what they will tell you it's called if you call them, is undoubtedly a rebranded Chinese Android phone. And that's just math. Like, that's aside from however you might feel about Trump. The reality is it costs a lot of money to set up a network, so they haven't done that. They're rebranding what is almost certainly T-Mobile's network. And it costs a lot of money to start manufacturing phones. And there's no way they're going to do that at $499. So what you have here is the Trump organization being the Trump organization. They're putting their name, some existing products and services in very familiar ways. And then they're making a bunch of promises.
The Verge's Nilay Patel on CNBC. President Trump with an about face on immigration crackdowns. The president has directed immigration officers to pause their arrests at farms and agricultural facilities and at restaurants and hotels. On today's watch list, the Fed begins a two-day meeting on interest rates. It's widely expected to hold them steady. We get the latest retail sales numbers.
Thank you, CNBC's Jessica Ettinger. When we return on America in the Morning, just when you thought it was safe, Jaws is back after these messages. Police in Salt Lake City are questioning two armed peacekeepers in the death of a protester at the Utah No Kings rally. More on the story from correspondent Lisa Dwyer.
A 39-year-old man shot and killed at a weekend No Kings protest in Salt Lake City. was a successful fashion designer from Samoa and a former Project Runway contestant who devoted his life to celebrating artists from the Pacific Islands. Arthur Alu was apparently an innocent bystander when a member of a peacekeeping team shot at another man. Detectives did not say why the alleged rifleman pulled out a weapon, but they've charged him with murder and accused him of creating the dangerous situation that led to Alu's death. Alu leaves behind his wife and 2 young children. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
Jaws is making a comeback. Not the shark, but the hot dog eating champion. Correspondent Ed Donahue reports on the return of a record-breaking competitive eater to the event that made him famous.
Joey Jaws Chestnut says he will return to compete in this year's Nathan's Famous 4th of July hot dog eating contest on Coney Island. He holds the world record of eating 76 hot dogs. Joey Chestnut! Chestnut missed the contest last year because of a contract dispute. He struck a deal with a competing brand, the plant-based meat company Impossible Foods. Chestnut says he's never appeared in ads for the company's vegan hot dogs, and Nathan's is the only hot dog company he has worked with. Joey Chestnut still works with Impossible Foods. He pointed out that he is not a vegan, but eats a plant-based diet during his recovery from competitive eating events. I'm Ed Donahue.
America in the Morning for Tuesday, June 17th, 2025 is produced by Jeff McKay. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour.
President Trump exits the G7 summit in Canada a day early. I'm Jennifer King.
There is a clear goal as the group of 7 meets in Canada. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
President Trump takes his immigration crackdown a step further.
Most of those people are in the cities.
I'm Clayton Neville.
Leonard Lauder has died at the age of 92. I'm Marcela Sanchez.
A Trump-branded cell phone service? I'm Chuck Palm, and I'll have that in today's Tech Report.
The case that symbolized the Me Too movement is over for now.
We're ready to go forward to trial again.
Julie Walker, New York.
What are the hottest movies yet to come out this year? I'm Kevin Carr.
Back after these messages. You're with America in the Morning. AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy has the forecast.
In a good part of the eastern U.S., there will be widespread showers and thunderstorms. This will run from Louisiana eastward along the Gulf Coast into Florida and northward to Ohio and western Pennsylvania. And then showers will cover the rest of Pennsylvania into New York and New England. A few of the storms in West Virginia and Virginia could bring drenching rainfall to the area, along with some local flash flooding, as well as some stronger wind gusts. But the greater risk for severe thunderstorms will develop in the Plain States again today and tonight. The area of concern will be a little farther south through Nebraska into Kansas and Missouri today. Even to start the day, there will be a few gusty thunderstorms in the region, and then another round will develop this afternoon and continue tonight. The strongest of these storms will be through southern Nebraska into Kansas, but the risk does continue through southern Iowa, northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, and western Michigan. These storms will have the potential for very heavy rain, damaging wind gusts, hail, and even a few tornadoes. A few more scattered afternoon thunderstorms will develop to the west of the area from eastern Montana through Wyoming and northeast Colorado. And then through the southern plains, we're looking at largely dry weather with plenty of sunshine and a hot afternoon. This will include southern Kansas before thunderstorms arrive, and then southward through Oklahoma and Texas, where highs will easily reach into the 90s, with West Texas having widespread 100s and even a few 110s. That heat will also continue through the southwest through New Mexico into Arizona and southern California, as well as southern Nevada, with highs once again in the 90s, 100s, and 110s. Through the rest of the region into the northwest, it will not be quite as hot with a mixture of clouds and sun. Highs will be mostly in the 70s and 80s in the northwest and 80s and low 90s farther south. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
Listen to the podcast version of our show. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. President Trump orders his national security team to the Situation Room. This after he abruptly leaves the G7 conference in Canada. The president's early departure comes as the U.S. military has moved additional ships and aerial refueling tanker aircraft into the Middle East. All U.S. bases in the region are on high alert as the Israel-Iran conflict worsens by the day. Correspondent Jennifer King reports that before leaving the G7, Trump sent a grim and urgent warning to the residents of Tehran, saying they should evacuate immediately.
President Trump exits the G7 summit in Canada a day early, headed home Monday night after a state dinner due to the intensifying conflict between Israel and Iran. That's according to a post by White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. At the summit, Trump said that Iranian leaders should make a deal and curb their nuclear program before it's too late.
It's painful for both parties, but I'd say Iran is not winning this war. And they should talk, and they should talk immediately.
By the afternoon, Trump posted on social media, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and warned that everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran. Israel had warned residents of the central part of the Iranian capital to evacuate before explosions were heard. Israel struck Iran's state-run television station during a live broadcast. The station later said its building was hit by 4 bombs. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the strikes have set Iran's nuclear program back a very, very long time. He added that Israel isn't attempting to topple the Iranian government, but that he would not be surprised if that happened as a result of the strikes. I'm Jennifer King.
The head of the International Atomic Energy Agency says there is a possibility of both radiological and chemical contamination within Iran's main nuclear facilities. The Israeli military has taken over the skies of Iran and continue to hit strategic targets in and around Tehran. Iran continues to fire both ballistic and hypersonic missiles at Israel. Correspondent Charles de Ledesma reports Israel's opposition party was scheming to bring down Netanyahu's government, but in the past 4 days of fighting, that's changed.
Now, just days into the ongoing operation against Iran, the opposition, led by Yair Lapid, has closed ranks behind the effort, suspending months of bitter criticism against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his handling of the war in Gaza. In his first international media interview since the start of the operation against Iran, Lapid explains his thinking.
I support it completely. I think we had no choice. It's not like we declared war on Iran. Iran has declared war on Israel years ago. And the reason they want a nuclear weapon is in order to use it against Israel.
It's a sharp about-face for Lapid's constellation of parties that have criticised Netanyahu throughout the war.
Yes, this now government needs to be toppled, but not in the midst of an existential fight for our life.
At a briefing in Vienna, Rafael Grossi says
the level of radioactivity outside the Natanz site has remained unchanged and at normal levels.
The IAEA chief stresses, however, that within the facility there's both radiological and chemical contamination.
The radiation, primarily consisting of alpha particles, poses a significant danger if uranium is inhaled or ingested.
I'm Charles de Ledesma.
The first day of the G7 conference in Canada was eventful, bringing about a trade deal between the U.S. and U.K., but the primary discussions focused on the Middle East. Washington correspondent Sagar Magani has a recap of events prior to Trump's abrupt departure.
I hope there's going to be a deal. I think it's time for a deal, and we'll see what happens, but sometimes they have to fight it out, but we're going to see what happens. I think there's a good chance there'll be a deal.
G7 leaders are scrambling to contain the growing fight between Israel and Iran. As their summit began in the Canadian Rockies, the leaders said they need to find a way of de-escalating. Meeting with Canada's leader, President Trump says both sides must start negotiating.
It's painful for both parties, but I'd say Iran is not winning this war. And they should talk, and they should talk immediately before it's too late.
But alongside Prime Minister Mark Carney,
our primary focus will be trade and trade with Canada.
The president signaled the fight over his tariffs is his priority, even as Carney and fellow G7 leaders look to project a unified front amid global chaos.
The G7 used to be the G8. Barack Obama and a person named Trudeau didn't want to have Russia in. And I would say that was a mistake, because I think you wouldn't have a war right now if you had Russia in. And you wouldn't have a war right now if Trump were president 4 years ago. But it didn't work out that way. But It used to be the G8.
President Trump is musing about making the G7 bigger as he meets with fellow world leaders in the Canadian Rockies.
And I would say that that was a mistake because I think you wouldn't have a war right now if you had Russia in.
The president says life is more complicated without Vladimir Putin at the table.
Putin speaks to me. He doesn't speak to anybody else. He doesn't want to talk because he was very insulted when he got thrown out of the G8.
Asked if China should also join the G7.
Well, it's not a bad idea. I don't mind that.
Beijing and Moscow would notably be authoritarian governments in a group whose other members are all democracies. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
The top stories of the day are sponsored by Sleep Number. Smarter sleep is life-changing. Save over $600 on a Sleep Number King P5 smart bed, the lowest price of the season, only at a Sleep Number store. Trump policies shot down by the courts. When America in the Morning continues after these messages. Two separate rulings were made Monday in cases involving the Trump administration and the continued pushback against his policies. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports.
A federal judge in Boston says the termination of National Institutes of Health grants for research on diversity-related topics by the Trump administration was void and illegal. This days after lawmakers grilled President Trump's NIH director, Jay Bhattacharya, about cuts to the department since Trump took office in January.
In 2020, the NIH terminated a very large number of clinical trials.
Well, I'm asking you about today,
I
under your
don't have
direction.
the specific numbers, and a lot of that is subject to negotiation. The numbers are in flux, and we'll have to get some of those numbers to you later.
Senator Patty Murray pressed the director specifically about cuts to HIV vaccine trials and other cuts.
Terminating those HIV vaccine trials now cuts off access to treatment for 6,000 patients in the network. You canceled a clinical trial evaluating new evidence-based interventions for type 2 diabetes in rural communities in Appalachia. You terminated a clinical trial studying immunotherapy in combination with monoclonal antibodies to treat women with recurrent ovarian cancer. That is what has already happened. So now you are coming to us today proposing to cut NIH funding by 40% next year.
This week, U.S. District Judge William Young ruled the NIH violated federal law by canceling more than $1 billion in research grants because of their perceived connection to diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. He accused the government of discriminating against racial minorities and LGBTQ people. The judge said he was reinstating grants that had been awarded to organizations and Democratic-led states that sued over the terminations. In a separate legal case involving the Trump administration, an order to block incoming foreign students from attending Harvard University will stay on hold following a hearing Monday, when a lawyer for Harvard said Trump was using its students as pawns. I'm Clayton Neville.
A former member of the U.S. Coast Guard is in trouble with the law. Virginia resident Peter Stinson served as an officer in the Coast Guard from 1998 to 2021 and was arrested for allegedly making threats to kill President Trump. In an affidavit filed, a task force officer for the FBI highlighted online threats that Stinson allegedly made, including graphic threats against Trump involving guns, poisoning, and even knives on multiple social media platforms. Stinson was charged with making threats to kill the president and is slated to make an additional appearance in federal court tomorrow. A giant in the cosmetics business who shaped his family's company into a global brand has passed away. Correspondent Marcela Sanchez reports.
Leonard Lauder has died at the age of 92. He passed away on Saturday, surrounded by his family. Lauder was born in 1933 in New York City, the eldest son of Estee and Joseph Lauder, founders of Estee Lauder Companies. He formally joined the business in his mid-20s and for over 6 decades expanded his family's cosmetics company into a multi-brand global giant. Lauder was also a longtime supporter of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. He pledged his 78-piece collection of Cubist art to the museum, the largest single philanthropic gift in the museum's history. Lauder served as a lieutenant in the U.S. Navy and as a Navy reservist. His son William P. Lauder, chair of the board at the Estée Lauder Companies, in a statement said, "He was the most charitable man I have ever known, believing that art and education belong to everyone and championing the fight against diseases such as Alzheimer's and breast cancer." I'm Marcela Sanchez.
The Trump brand is now going wireless with a new cellular service and a gold smartphone. Chuck Palm has details in today's Tech Report.
President Trump's family name will be used to launch a new cell phone service. In an announcement, Trump's children said they will be operating using the network of 3 major U.S. wireless carriers. In addition, Trump's eldest, Don Jr., said, "We're going to be introducing an entire package of products where people can get telemedicine on their phones for 1 monthly fee, roadside assistance for their cars, and unlimited texting to 100 countries around the world." Prices were stated to be at $47.45 per month, a play on his presidency numbers, and a sleek gold smartphone designed and built in the United States for $499. The company, called T1 Mobile, registered in Florida, did not disclose which carriers they will be using. When asked about why start a new phone service, Don Jr. had this to say.
A big part of what we've done right now in the world has been focused on technology for people who have been underserved, whether that's been in crypto. We felt there was lackluster performance was in the mobile industry.
When talking about Android-based specs on the phone, most reviewers were skeptical as this combination doesn't exist yet, especially at a sub-$500 price point. For more, find me at chuckpalm.com.
Sports is in this Tuesday, and here's our Robert Workman.
Oklahoma City is now just 1 win away from the NBA title. The Thunder beat the Pacers 120-109 in Game 5 of the NBA Finals in OKC last night for a 3-2 series lead. Jalen Williams leading the way with a playoff career-high 40 points. Coach Mark Daigneault.
Great force, and we've used that word with him in his development when he's at his best. That was an unbelievable performance by him.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander added 31, while Indiana star Tyrese Halliburton hurt his leg early in the game and had just 4 points, all from the free throw line. Game 6, Thursday night in Indianapolis. Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals is tonight in Florida. The Panthers up 3-2 on the Oilers, just 1 win away from repeating as champions. Baseball, the Dodgers doubled up the Padres 6-3. Shohei Ohtani gave up a couple of singles and a run as the opener, his first trip to the mound since 2023 Tommy John surgery. But he also got 2 hits and drove in a pair as the DH. Red Sox shut out the Mariners 2-0. Lucas Giolito and the Torpedoes with a 4-hitter. Roman Anthony with his first home run in the show. Angels edged the Yankees 1-0 in 11 innings. Wins for the A's, Rockies, Rays, and Phillies. At the College World Series in Omaha, third-ranked Arkansas eliminated Murray State 3-0. Razorback starter Gage Wood fired the first no-hitter at the College World Series since 1960, striking out a record 19 batters, and the only runner to reach base was on an 8th-inning hit by pitch. That's Tuesday Sports.
Thank you, sir. When we return on America in the Morning, more legal wranglings in the Weinstein trial and potential blockbusters coming to a theater near you after these messages. The trial for Harvey Weinstein is over in New York City, but a new trial may be on the horizon as both the prosecution and the attorney for the disgraced movie mogul say the case is far from over. Correspondent Julie Walker reports.
Movie mogul Harvey Weinstein found guilty on 1 count of a criminal sex act, but not guilty on another. The jury unable to reach a verdict on a 3rd charge, the judge declaring a mistrial on that last count. Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg.
We are ready to go forward to trial again.
Weinstein's first guilty verdict in 2020 was overturned on appeal last year. The 73-year-old's retrial began in April. Production assistant Mimi Haley testified at with both juries convicting him of sexually assaulting her.
Testifying in the face of constant disruptions, victim shaming, and deliberate attempts to distort the truth was exhausting and at times dehumanizing.
She was at court when the split decision came down June 11th. Weinstein was acquitted on a criminal sex act charge relating to former model Kaya Sikola, who spent 5 days testifying. He chose not to testify in his own defense at either trial. His lawyer, Arthur Aidala, says this is not over.
And after almost 20 women came out in courthouses across the nation, there's one conviction. One.
Aidala vowing to appeal. The former Hollywood honcho is also in the process of appealing a 2023 rape conviction in Los Angeles, where he was sentenced to 16 years in prison. Julie Walker, New York.
There were some blockbuster hits in movie theaters for the first half of 2025, and it appears that some more box office smashes are on the horizon for the second half of the year. Here's America in the Morning entertainment reporter Kevin Carr.
With the first half of 2025 in our rear view, what's left to look forward to in theaters?
Crypto. Home. Daily home.
On the superhero front, we have James Gunn's Superman flying back to the movie screens on July 11th. 2 weeks later, Marvel will counter with their retro-futuristic reboot of the Fantastic Four: First Steps on July 25th.
Everyone is talking about the comeback kid.
Happy Gilmore.
Happy Gilmore.
Good morning.
Also on July 25th, a blast from the past drops on Netflix when Happy Gilmore 2 hits the links.
You're hunting something that can't be killed.
Looking ahead to the holiday season, some high-profile sequels will drop, starting with Predator: Badlands on November 7th.
This is between us, the wizard and I.
2 weeks later, Return to Oz when Wicked for Good defies gravity on November 21st. And on Thanksgiving weekend, take the kids to see Zootopia 2 on November 26th.
Welcome back. Are you ready to start the show?
It's not exactly a Christmas movie, but 2 years ago, legions of fans showed up for the first film on streaming and in theaters. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 hit screens on December 5th.
Let's get it done.
And finally, if its predecessors are any indicator, James Cameron's return to theaters will yield another billion-dollar movie with Avatar: Fire and Ash coming out on December 19th. I'm Kevin Carr.
America in the Morning for Tuesday, June 17th, 2025 is produced by Jeff McKay. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.